Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are doing something really interesting today. We're going deep on telomeres. Like, can a supplement actually make them longer? You've probably heard about telomeres. They're these protective caps, right, at the ends of our DNA strands. And they're a really big deal when it comes to how many times our cells can divide, which, ultimately impacts how we age.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it. They're like the little plastic tips on your shoelaces. They keep things from fraying and falling apart. And the study we're looking at today, it was published in Rejuvenation Research back in 2016. And get this, it actually explored whether a supplement could make those telomeres longer. The supplement is called TA65, and they were looking at its effects in real humans.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit, because this wasn't just any study, right? This was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, like the gold standard when it comes to research. And they even used this very specific, very precise method to measure the telomeres. It's called HTQFISH. I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, this just means we can trust those results a bit more.
Oh, absolutely. And the results were pretty wild, to be honest. The researchers found that the group taking a low dose of TA65, their telomeres actually got longer. And we're not just talking about a tiny bit. Over a year, they added back an average of 530 base pairs. Those are like the building blocks of DNA, right? And just for comparison, the placebo group, their telomeres shortened by about 290 base pairs, which, that's kind of what you'd expect to see as we age.
So it's almost like with the low dose of TA65, they hit the pause button on the telomere shortening. Maybe even like rewound the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, here's where I find things get really interesting. They tested a higher dose of TA65, and surprisingly, it didn't have that same effect on telomere length.
Right, it's true. And you'd think more is better, but that's not always how it goes with the body, is it? This is one of those areas where science reminds us just how complex it all is. Like, maybe there's a sweet spot when it comes to dosage.
Yeah, like over-fertilizing your prize-winning roses, right? Too much of a good thing.
Exactly. But you know what I think is really key here? They found this low dose of TA65 was especially good at lengthening the shortest telomeres. Think about it. Those shortest telomeres are like the weakest links in the chain.
Yeah.
They're the ones really linked to age-related decline, So that's a big deal.
That's really interesting. So much to unpack there. But before everyone listening runs out to buy TA65, I think it's time for a little reality check. We need to talk about the study participants. They all had something in common.
Yeah.
They were positive for cytomegalovirus, CMV for short. Now, before anyone panics, most people actually have CMV. And most of the time, it's harmless, hanging out in the background. But, and this is important, it has been linked to faster aging of the immune system.
Exactly, and that's a key point here because having CMV, it might have made the participants' telomeres shorten faster than you'd expect for their age. So in a way, the researchers kind of used CMV as a way to see those supplement effects more clearly. Like they were hitting fast forward on the aging process and then seeing if they could slow it down.
That makes sense. It's like setting up the experiment to be extra sensitive to change. So yes, the results are really interesting, really promising even. But we have to be cautious about applying them too broadly. We need more research to be sure, especially with people who don't have CMV.
Right, just to confirm if those effects are universal or if there's something more going on there. So we're talking about telomeres and how they might be impacted by this supplement, TA65. But it's important to remember, this study wasn't looking at just any cells. They were focused on a specific type of immune cell. Cytotoxic T cells, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
And these cells, they're kind of like the body's warriors, right? Fighting off infections, keeping everything in check.
That's a great way to put it. But like any good warrior, they can get worn down over time.
Right. Makes sense. And that's where those telomeres come in. You see, every time a cell divides, those telomeres get a bit shorter, and eventually they get so short that the cell just can't divide effectively anymore.
Huh. So it's like the cell is reaching retirement age?
Exactly. It's worn out. It's time for it to, step back from the front lines.
So if we can find a way to keep those telomeres from shrinking so fast, especially in these really important immune cells, well, that could be huge for healthy aging.
Oh, absolutely. Huge implications there. Although it's important to keep in mind that this study, well, it looked at TA65 specifically, right?
Right.
But there are other things that can impact telomere length too.
Oh, of course.
We're talking diet, exercise, stress levels, all the usual suspects.
Right, all those good habits we always hear about. So it's not as simple as just popping a supplement and calling it a day. It's about a more holistic approach to well-being. But I have to say, even with that in mind, knowing that a supplement like this might have this kind of effect on telomeres, it is pretty amazing.
Oh, it's incredibly exciting. It opens up a world of possibilities. Like, imagine if we could target those shortest telomeres directly, the ones that are most vulnerable. That could have a huge impact on how we age, and how susceptible we are to all these age-related diseases.
I was like, what if we could just, I don't know, reinforce the weakest links in the chain
Hmm.
before they have a chance to break?
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned earlier that they used a really precise method to measure the telomeres, something called HTQ-FISH.
Yeah.
Can you remind us again why that mattered? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean for us trying to understand all of this?
Oh, that's a great question. Because you see, not all telomere measurements are created equal. Some methods, they're just better at picking up those very short telomeres, the ones we really care about when we're talking about aging.
So this HTQ-FISH method, it was particularly good at spotting those short ones.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're getting a really clear picture of what was happening in those cells.
Right. It's like using a higher powered microscope. We can see those tiny details. And the fact that they saw lengthening even in those shortest telomeres, I mean, that makes these findings even more compelling, in my opinion.
So where does this all leave us? Like, if you're listening to this, maybe a little intrigued by this whole telomere thing, what can you actually do with this information?
The million-dollar question, right? Hey, well, I think the first thing to remember always is this is just one study. It's super interesting, don't get me wrong, it's promising, but we need more research. We need to confirm these findings, explore different dosages, see how this works in people who don't have CMV.
So not time to bet the farm on TA65 just yet.
Exactly, exactly. But, that doesn't mean you're powerless in the meantime. While the scientists are, doing their thing, unraveling the mysteries of aging and telomeres and all that, there are things we can do today, right now, to support our health and well-being.
Okay, so back to basics. Those good habits we always talk about.
You got it. Things like managing your stress levels, making sure you get enough sleep, eating a balanced diet, you know the drill, incorporating regular exercise, all of that can have a positive impact on how we age. And yeah, potentially even on those telomeres, although more research is always needed there.
Right, it's not just about finding that one magic pill. It's about this bigger picture, these lifestyle factors that we know contribute to overall health.
100%. It's about being proactive,
Yeah.
making choices that support our bodies and minds for the long haul. This study, this TA65 thing, it's like a fascinating peek behind the curtain, this potential of actually directly impacting telomere length. But it's just one piece of a much larger puzzle, right?
Right, and it feels like the research in this area is just moving so quickly.
Oh, absolutely. It's exploding. What we know today, it might just be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to understanding how we age and what we can actually do about it.
It really is like exploring this whole new frontier.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on that note, exciting as it is. That's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. To everyone listening, if you want to learn more about the research we talked about today, you can find a link to the original study in our show notes. And as always, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration into the world of science and discovery. We'll see you next time.